What's good, y'all? This is the big one. This is the big one. Honestly, I made this channel with the intentions of making this video. I've been collecting records for a little over 3 years, have started taking it very seriously within the past year or so. And just recently, about a week ago, I crossed the threshold of my 50th vinyl, which for some of the more audiophiles that are maybe watching this video, you may be thinking that those are rookie numbers. But to me, and someone who takes music very seriously, someone who enjoys music to the extent that I do, that's a pretty big milestone for me. And I feel very passionately about some of the records that I own. I take pride in my collection. And I know that in the grand scheme of things, I'm still a relatively small YouTuber, so I don't know how many of you are actually even going to care about what I have to say about the vinyls that I own. But this is something that I've wanted to talk about for quite a long time. Maybe you just want to put this on in the background while you do other shit. Maybe you're actually genuinely interested in the type of music that I listen to. Maybe you want some recommendations. I am gonna try to not waste too much of your time. I think that this is going to err on the longer side of videos. I don't want to edit this all too much. There are some records that I have very little to say about, and on the other hand, there are some records that I have lots and lots and lots to talk about. So don't be surprised if I pop a record up, kind of just tell you what it is and move on. It's not that I dislike the record. I actually don't own a record that I dislike, but it's just for the sake of time, because I don't want this video to get longer than, like, God forbid, an hour. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Without further ado, this is but first a shave. Much better. Is that cool? Let me know in the comments if that was cool. On my Casey Neistat type shit. I think I'm gonna start with the stuff that's on my wall, and then I'm gonna move on to the shelf. I tried to organize it by artist. We'll see how I did. Who fucking knows? All right, first record I've got is Headrest, Twin Fantasy. This is, without a doubt, one of my favorite albums of all time. It is one that has stuck with me for many, many, many years. I loved this record even before I started really delving into music in the way that I do now. I think that this record really just came at a time in my life where I needed to hear something exactly like this. And, you know, the words that Will Toledo speaks and to the way that the instrumentals sound, it still just resonates so deeply with me. It's a little bit of an abrasive listen. It is not incredibly accessible, but I think that that's why I love it so much, and I think it is one that kind of got me to appreciate harder to understand music as a whole. The themes found within this record are, I think, so important for a young adult and someone that is trying to navigate just how weird society is and how awkward life can be at times. And Will Toledo captures that beautifully and perfectly within this record. I don't think that there is a single miss on this thing, and this is one of my few 10 out of 10s. It's one that I needed to own on vinyl. And I think actually a friend of mine picked this up for me, which was awesome. But this is one of the best records of all time, in my opinion. All right, next I got LCD Sound System, This Is Happening. This is another 10 out of 10, in my opinion. I think that the production to be found on this record is some of the best that you will find on any body of music. This thing is indie-tronica, electro, dance through and through. Some of the greatest riffs of all time to be found on this thing. From the build up to the drop of the intro track, Dance Yourself Clean, which in my opinion is one of the greatest musical moments of all time, to the beautiful riff and guitar work on All I Want. There is not much to dislike about this project at all. This is another one of my 10 out of 10s. It's another one that I have been a fan of for quite a long time. I would love to see James Murphy live. That is one of my holy grails. I gotta hear that Dance Yourself Clean drop in the flesh, dude. But yeah, nothing crazy. It's just a standard 2 LP. Yeah, I don't know, it's just fantastic. It's one of the greats. Next I have Illinois by Sufjan Stevens. I swear I'm not doing this on purpose. This is another 10 out of 10, in my opinion. You know, depending on the day, depending on when you ask me, I might tell you that this is actually my favorite record of all time. The instrumentation on this thing is so luscious, so layered, so beautiful, and so perfected. I'm a sucker for horns on a record, and Sufjan uses them so powerfully on this record. It's a little bit of a lengthy one, but genuinely I don't think that there's even a dull moment on this thing. It almost plays out as if it's like a musical, or as if you're watching like a stage play. Some of the best tracks on this thing being Come On Feel the Illinois, Jacksonville, Chicago, Kashmir Pulaski Day. And as a Midwest boy and someone that grew up in Chicago, this is kind of a necessity. So yeah, one of the best records of all time, absolutely. If not, you know, definitely the best folk album of all time. These next two I'm not gonna talk a whole lot about because I made a whole video about them, but Tyler, the Creator's Flower Boy kind of redefined his sound. He kind of honestly made a little bit of a 180 in terms of his personality, his musical ability, and his maturity as an artist. That's everything that Flower Boy is. It's absolutely a more mature outing from Tyler, who had previously made a lot of juvenile, kind of occasionally sloppily created material, but Flower Boy is so different, and it's a little bit of a turning point in his career. The interior sleeve is hilarious, and despite Tyler's persona being so silly and kind of non-serious, this is one of his most serious records to date. Pretty easily accessible. There are a lot of radio hits to be found on this thing with See You Again, Boredom, and 911 Mr. Lonely. But if you're a fan of alt hip hop, this is a necessity. As is Igor by Tyler, the Creator. I think that this is leagues better than Flower Boy, and I already love Flower Boy. I think that this is one of the greatest breakup albums of the last couple of decades. It's so weird and so just like wild that this thing even exists, or let alone sounds the way that it does. I would strongly recommend this to anyone who's going through some shit, because there's a lot of gold to be found on this record. Yeah, there's very few dull points on this thing. It's a near perfect album in my opinion. Yeah, just fantastic stuff. Next, I've got M83's Hurry Up, We're Dreaming. Man, I mean, what is there to say about this thing? It's kind of a beast. Maybe a little bit bloated, one could argue, but there's so much to enjoy here. Midnight City is one of the greatest songs of all time. There's nothing all that wild about this vinyl in particular, but surprisingly it was actually one that took me quite a while to find in the wild. The highs on this record are astronomical, and so epic and so transcendent, and it's quickly become one of my favorite electro pop records of all time. I have a lot of nostalgia towards this record, and it's one that I return to quite often, and it is a great one to listen to on a flight. Next, I've got Screamadelica by Primal Scream. For a long time, this was one of my staples. This is an album that meant a lot to me when I was younger, and growing up, it's still a fantastic record. Funnily enough, this is actually the last one that I picked up. This is my 50th record, and it's honestly like a feat that this was pulled off as effortlessly and as flawlessly as it was. It is a fusion, a melting pot of genre. And the fact that it came out in the early 90s and sounds as good as it does today is pretty insane. Best tracks being Moving On Up, Come Together, Loaded, and Coming Down. Iconic album cover, an old favorite of mine, and definitely worth your time if you're into kind of like a dance, house, neo-psychedelia kind of sound. Next, I have Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. Funnily enough, this was my pandemic record. I listened to pretty much nothing but this in quarantine, and because of that, it holds a very soft spot in my heart. This is another one of my 10 out of 10s, and it's not just because I have a huge crush on Phoebe Bridgers. She has such a way with words. There's such a delicate essence to the content on this record, but it is so devastatingly sad and relatable. And I think that Phoebe has such a way with words and keeping things so simple, but loading so much meaning into what she's saying. I don't think there's a bad moment on this thing. I love how many different tones it tackles, all while remaining very consistent in its sound and theme and tone. And I Know the End is, I think, probably my favorite album closer of all time. The build-up and the explosive outro on that track is a sight to behold. And yeah, Punisher's awesome. One of my favorite records of all time, and it's been that way for quite some time now. All right, now we move on to the stuff that you cannot see. I've got here Good Kid, Mad City, Kendrick Lamar. I've got a video on the way about Kendrick, so we'll keep this part relatively brief, but this is another 10 out of 10. The storytelling to be found on this record is probably the best that I've seen in a record. This record is cinematic. You listen to it front to back, it tells a coherent story through and through, and you are engaged from start to finish. And on top of that, the music's good. It's catchy, it's accessible, and the fact that Kendrick was able to juggle those two aspects of storytelling and of lyrical cohesion together so perfectly. Like, this is really just one of the greatest hip-hop records of all time. Rivaled only by To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick Lamar, another 10 out of 10, obviously. I'm not the first person to say that. This is widely regarded as the greatest hip-hop record of all time. I want to say it's number 1 on AOTY. It's either that or In Rainbows. I love this thing. The production, the instrumentation on this record is insane. Kendrick rapping across these beats feels like such a uncharted territory in music. And this thing manages to be so weird, but so cohesive and so engaging. I actually picked this one up at Amoeba when I was out in San Francisco, and I don't know, it just felt right. Like, this is just a record that someone like me just needed to own. Not one that I spin a whole lot on the turntable, but it's, you know, it's a great wall piece, and it's absolutely one of the greatest hip hop records of all time. Kendrick's the GOAT. Next, I've got Revolver, The Beatles. I don't have much to say about this record. I think that this is their best work. A lot of people will discredit the Beatles. They'll say like, oh, it's an old headband, like who cares? And they haven't heard Revolver. These guys were doing some crazy shit way before anyone else was. And this record is a testament of that. Some of the stuff on this record sounds like it came out last year. Taxman, Eleanor Rigby, She Said, She Said, Tomorrow Never Knows, which is, I think, an underrated Beatles song and one of my favorites. This thing is just insane. Like, wall to wall, just honestly, like, insanity. I don't know what they were smoking when they made this thing, but I want some. These next two I'm barely gonna talk about because I made a video on these, but OK Computer by Radiohead. One of the best albums of all time. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I talked about this in the video, but it gets so close. The themes of this record are as prevalent today as they were when this thing released. I think that this is one of the most important records to release of all time. It's commentary on technology and society and the way that we go about our daily lives. It's commentary on capitalism and the way that it consumes us is just conveyed so perfectly through this music. Some of the most beautiful music that I've ever heard to be found on this thing, like Let Down, like No Surprises, alongside some of the most unsettling music I've ever heard on this thing, like Climbing Up the Walls or Exit Music for a Film. You know, it's OK Computer. It's Radiohead. You know about them. They're great. There's nothing else to say. And following suit, I've got In Rainbows, Radiohead. Not as good as OK Computer, but still pretty flawless. A lot of people argue this to be the greatest album of all time, and I can't say that I don't see it. This has some of Radiohead's most mature, most concise, and most interesting material to date. It's just so accessible while remaining genre-defining and unique enough to warrant it being like one of the greats. It's also just got an iconic album cover. Someone picked this up for me at an antique store of all things, which is kind of funny. But yeah, this is, you know, it's In Rainbows. If you want to hear me talk about Radiohead more, watch the Radiohead tier list. Next, I've got My Bloody Valentine's Loveless. Wow. You know, it's funny, this is actually a record that I don't really listen to as much anymore, but it's one of the most important shoegaze records of all time. I think it's actually probably my favorite shoegaze record of all time. This album feels and sounds broken, which is so wild to listen to in real time. The sounds that they play with on here are so alien and so abrasive, but it all sounds intentional, and the messiness in itself is beautiful. This is one that I just had to have on vinyl. It's one that I think actually benefits from a headphone listen as opposed to a turntable listen, but this record really captures a tone and really nails immersion. And yeah, I don't know. It's one of those albums that sounds like it's cover art. Just very messy, very foggy, but so alien and so beautiful. Next, I've got The War on Drugs, Lost in the Dream. This was a bit of an impulse purchase. I can't say that I listened to this one as much as I did when I first bought it. I still think it's an amazing record. It's a little bit of a comfort listen, like the music is just, it's hard to listen to this thing and not just have a huge smile across your face. It's a very calming listen, and it's worth it for Under the Pressure alone. That is one of the greatest alt rock tracks, maybe of all time. But other than that, I don't really have much to say about this record. I talked about it in a monthly recap not too long back, so yeah, good stuff. Bro, I'm already tired. Yeah, we're not even like remotely done. Next, I got Ants From Up There by Black Country New Road. Another 10 out of 10. This is, oh man, what is there to say about this record? I mean, it's all killer, no filler. The vocal performances from Isaac Wood are so strained, so pained, and so personal. And the instrumentation on this thing is immaculate. It's masterful in its craft. Listening to this thing often feels like you are in a hurricane of orchestration and you're just along for the ride. This thing is devastating. It is beautiful. It's a newer record. I believe it came out in 2022. And it's my most recent 10 out of 10. But wow, man, I think that if you're just like a fan of music, this is worth checking out. Tracks like Concord, The Place Where He Inserted the Blade, and Basketball Shoes are just like cream of the crop, dude. If you're a fan of longer songs, this is your bread and butter. Yeah, I have a lot of love aimed towards this record. I don't listen to it very often as of recently, and even just like looking at this now and thinking about the kind of material that's on this thing, I'm gonna have to hop back in and bring this back into rotation because I genuinely love what's on there. All right, next I've got Nurture by Porter Robinson. I talked about this in length in a monthly recap video, so I'm gonna kind of gloss over this, but it's so pretty. One of the most beautiful electronica records that I've heard ever. Musician, Mirror, Look at the Sky, Get Your Wish, Unfold, all fantastic cuts. Porter nails immersion. It's just a very feel-good listen, all while having lyrical content that can be at times quite heavy and quite personal. But yeah, love this so much. I cannot wait to see this guy next month. Next, I've got Saturation 3 by Brockhampton. This is actually a bootleg. This is not an official release. To my knowledge, they never actually released the Saturation trilogy, but it's a cool bootleg, all things considered. I will say it doesn't sound all that great, which is fine. I kind of expected that. I really just got this because I thought that it would be a fun thing for the wall, and the Saturation trilogy from Brockhampton means a lot to me. They really got me into alt hip-hop as a genre, and I owe a lot of my music identity to those guys. They introduced me to a lot of cool sounds that I wasn't previously familiar with. And I do think that Saturation 3 is one of Brockhampton's greater albums. I think that it aged the best out of most of them too. Tracks like Boogie, Zipper, Stupid, Bleach, Sister Rental, all bangers. Brockhampton was really in their bag during the Saturation trilogy, and Saturation 3 kind of felt like the perfect culmination of all the stuff that we had heard from them before. So this is a cool thing to own, even if it's not legit. Next, I've got Iridescence by Brockhampton. This one is legit. This one's real. Same kind of vibe. It's got a clear vinyl. Yeah, this is one of Brockhampton's most interesting works. It's their most experimental. It's the album that they had released right after all of the Amir allegations and him departing from the group. So this sounding so abrasive and so messy and so incoherent at times kind of adds to its charm. I know some people didn't rock with that at the time. I've since fallen off of the Brockhampton train quite a bit, but this is still a record that I hold very near and dear to my heart. This is another one that I kind of grew up with. And yeah, I don't know, there are some bangers on this thing. Jover is one of the greatest hardcore hip hop cuts, maybe of all time. So Iridescence rocks, good album. Next, I've got Teens of Denial by Car Seat Headrest. This released right before the Twin Fantasy re-release, so you know, it's pretty similar sentiment. I like this one slightly less than Twin Fantasy, but that's really just because of personal bias. Teens of Denial is far more indie rock leaning. The riffs on this thing, the melodies on this thing are so catchy. Fill in the blank, Destroyed by Hippie Powers, Drugs with Friends, Drunk Drivers, Killer Whales. There is a lot to admire on this thing. This is one that, you know, stays in my rotation pretty consistently. I think that Car Seat Headrest's most accessible and engaging material can be found on this thing. If you are into garage rock, this thing is pretty fantastic. So keeping on the Car Seat Headrest train for just a moment, I've got Faces from the Masquerade. When I said that I don't dislike a single record in my collection, I kind of lied. I don't love this live performance. I think that Commit Yourself Completely from a couple years prior was a better outing than this guy. I really just got it for the cover that I love. I just don't think that the live performances of some of these records live up to the originals. Like Fill in the Blank, like Bodies, like Beach, Life and Death, all of which are some of my favorite songs of all time. So I think that I'm a little bit picky when it comes to the covers, but this just doesn't do it for me all that well, but still dope cover. Glad I picked this up. All right, next I've got Sound of Silver, LCD Sound System. It's more of the same. I think you could argue that this is actually a more consistent listen than This Is Happening. I don't love this one as much. I don't think that the highs are as high as the highs on This Is Happening, but some of my favorite musical moments can be found on this thing. North American Scum, Someone Great, All My Friends, New York, I Love You, But You're Bringing Me Down are some of my favorite cuts of all time. There is so much beauty on this record. Similar to This Is Happening, it is elegantly produced. Every sound sounds perfectly placed. James Murphy is killing it with his performances. And yeah, this is just kind of a necessary record for me to own. I've also got American Dream by LCD Soundsystem. This is an interesting one. A lot of diehard LCD Soundsystem fans do not actually love this record. I don't share that sentiment. I quite enjoy a lot of the material on this thing. To me, it's kind of just more of what I love about the band. Oh Baby, How Do You Sleep, Call the Police, Black Screen are among some of my favorites here. Yeah, I don't know, it's not as experimental as the other two LCD Soundsystem records that I own, but I think that there's still a lot to admire here. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this one, but there are some songs on here that I truly just love, so I just felt like I needed to own this on vinyl for those songs themselves, so. All right, next I've got Everyone Else Is Doing It, So Why Can't I by the Cranberries. I don't have much to say about this record. I mean, it's the Cranberries, like you fucking know that they're good. I think it's just one of the greatest pop records of all time, even though it's a little bit older. Absolutely has some of the greatest pop tracks of all time, at least, with Dreams, Sunday, and Linger. Like, those are all absolute slappers, but I don't really have much else to say about this one. It's just really good. It's one that I play to this day quite a bit. Next, I've got Stranger in the Alps by Phoebe Bridgers. Talked about Phoebe Bridgers a little bit earlier in the video, but this record came before Punisher, and while I don't love it as much as Punisher, there are still some fantastic cuts to be found on this thing, like Smoke Signals, like Motion Sickness, like Georgia, and who can forget Scott Street. I was crying to Scott Street before TikTok thought it was cool. I also don't really have much to say about this record. It's just a really homey listen, devastating at times, but also quite beautiful and elegant at times as well. Okay, next I have The Record by Boygenius. Boygenius T, represent. This is a very pretty record. I think that it probably should have won the Grammy, but it's fine. Give it to Taylor Swift or whatever. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull this out. It's got a cool color. It's got like a nice little orange color, which is cool. I think that if I were to describe this record as a color, I would say it's like a sunset orange. And now I can't. Please, okay. Phoebe Bridgers, Julian Baker, and Lucy Dacus are a force to be reckoned with. They are three of the best voices in pop and folk working today. $20, Emily, I'm Sorry, True Blue, Not Strong Enough, all just beautiful. The harmonizations on this thing are so engaging, and yeah, just a really beautiful record. It's nothing that I think like will blow your mind or anything like that, but like in terms of just accessible, sweet pop, this is pretty great. Some pretty great singer-songwriter type stuff. Okay, next I've got Everything So Far by Pinegrove. This is a big boy. There's a ton of stuff in here. I believe it's just 2 LP, but there's a thick ass lyric book in here, which is pretty cool. Pinegrove is pretty awesome if you've never heard them before. Just some great like Midwest emo, indie rock kind of vibes. I can't say I love every track on here, and this is a long record. It is a compilation of pretty much like every song that Pinegrove felt was necessary listening to understand the band. New Friends, Problems, Need To, obviously V, all just great vibes. I don't know, Pinegrove is just pretty sick. It's funny because you throw this on the turntable and it's as if they are playing live for you in the room. That's kind of why I like them. It's a shame that they're not really making music anymore, but yeah, I don't know. These guys are pretty cool, so I don't have really much to say about it. Need To's a banger. Next, I've got Jubilee by Japanese Breakfast. This is a record that I was obsessed with when it came out in 2021, I believe. And she hasn't really released anything since, which is kind of a bummer because this is like just kind of honestly like all killer, no filler, just like great indie pop. I think that Japanese Breakfast is one of the strongest voices in the twee pop scene, with tracks like Paprika, Be Sweet, Kokomo, Indiana, and Posing for Cars being like one of my favorite album closers of all time. I'm a sucker for like long, explosive album outros, and Posing for Cars is among the greatest of those. But yeah, I don't know, I love the aesthetic of this vinyl. I don't know, I strongly recommend it kind of to like everybody. It's just good. It's a very good album. Can you tell that I'm like starting to get delirious? I have so many more records to talk about and I'm tired. Jubilee. Next, I've got Heaven or Las Vegas by the Cocteau Twins. If you're a fan of shoegaze, Cocteau Twins, like, you know who they are. Let's not beat around the bush. They're some of the best of the best. Don't love this thing as much as Loveless by My Bloody Valentine, but this thing is still pretty kick-ass. It's crazy that like the lead vocalist is just straight up not saying anything of substance. This record is being carried alone by the vibe, which it excels at. But yeah, there is like very little to no actual lyrical substance on this thing, which makes for a very interesting listen. And that is not to detract the quality from this record at all, because it is one of the greatest records I've ever listened to. But it's one that I had to get on vinyl. It's a great night album. It's an even better album to listen to while you're driving. But yeah, Heaven or Las Vegas, it's just got some like absolute heaters on it. This is worth a listen for sure. Okay, next I've got an album that's actually pretty new to me. Mercurial World by Magdalena Bay. They're actually dropping later this month, so I'm actually incredibly excited to see what they do, but this is some of the most fun that I have had with pop in recent memory. This thing just feels so like explosive, and it's pushing the mold of what electropop was up until this point. Like there is nothing that quite sounds like this record. A lot of it is very gamey, like video gamey in its production, but the vocals are so sweet and mesh so perfectly with like the almost abrasive production and instrumentation. Yeah, this is another album that like sounds how it looks, just kind of like inexplainable and a little bit like intentionally messy and chaotic, which is very cool. Yeah, You Lose, Secrets, Cherry, Hysterical Us are the highlights off of this thing. Definitely worth your time. If you've never heard of these guys before and you're a fan of electropop, what are you doing? Check these guys out. Next, I've got Fearless Movement by Kamasi Washington. I talked about this in great length in one of my monthly recap videos, so I'm gonna spare you guys the time, but a modern masterpiece, one of the greatest jazz performers working today. Kamasi kills it on this thing. The rap features are a little bit silly, but I still think that they make for such a fun and engaging listen, and the instrumentals on this thing are truly some of the best to come out of this year. The Garden Path and Prologue, two of which I think are probably my favorite tracks to come out of this year. Very recent record, came out in May, but absolutely worth your time. Took a little breaky, but I'm back. I feel like I'm dying. Next I've got Is This It by The Strokes. It's The Strokes. I love The Strokes. You love The Strokes. We all love The Strokes. And Is This It is arguably their greatest record to date. It's their first one. The influence that it had on indie rock to follow was a plane. Is pretty admirable and pretty substantial. Tracks like Is This It, The Modern Age, Someday, Last Night, hard to explain. Just some absolute bangers to be found on this thing. Nothing crazy on the inside or anything, but it's a record that someone that likes indie as much as I do just has to own. Next, I've got Plastic Beach by the Gorillaz. Funnily enough, this is actually the first record that I ever owned. It is honestly not one that I really listen to anymore. I don't actually love the Gorillaz as much as I used to. This is definitely a product of my youth, but you know, it's got some pretty cool art on the inside, the lyric book and the posters that come with it. Pretty cool. The genre fusion that can be found on this record is pretty admirable and done pretty effortlessly. I do think that this is probably my second favorite Gorillaz record after Demon Days. And while it's not one that I spin much anymore, it is still one that means a great deal to me and my musical journey as a youth. So, Plastic Beach. Next, I've got Hit Me Hard and Soft by Billie Eilish. Already talked about this one. I think it's probably one of the best pop records to come out this year. Production is solid. Performances are solid, some luscious production, and some great melodies to be found on this thing. Lunch and Chihiro are two tracks that, like, to this day I still play. So very cool record. Wanted to get it on vinyl for the come on. The pretty color. Yeah, it's a cool one. It's also biodegradable or some shit, if you care. All right, next I got It's Blitz by CHVRCHES. Talked about this one, like, actually last video, so I'm not gonna talk about this one much at all. Just like the cover a lot. Very cool. The inside is actually, like, pretty disgusting. It's like a nasty pizza. Didn't know it was gonna be that gross, but it's fine because the music's really good. Some of the most iconic indie rock to come out of the early 2000s New York City scene. Yeah, just really good. It's high energy, but also has some really cool, deep cut, slower, more sentimental tracks that I quite enjoy. Next, I've got Yankee Hotel Foxtrot by Wilco. As a Chicago boy, I am contractually obligated to fuck with this record. I don't know, I don't actually really have much at all to say about this record. It's got a cream pressing, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have really much to say about this record. It's kind of a comfort listen for me. Just some really good music. I don't really have much to say about this one. Next, I've got Piñata by Freddie, Gibbs, and Madlib. Also talked about this one pretty recently. This is actually one of the cooler records that I own. It is the 10-year anniversary vinyl of this record. It's also a Record Store Day 2024 exclusive, hence why it looks like... I love how most of this video is just gonna be me struggling to pull the fucking vinyls out from the sleeves. It's got like a cool green, black, white splash of color on a clear pressing. I think it's pretty cool. I think that this is some of Madlib's best work. I think it's obviously some of Freddie Gibbs' best work. They're a match made in heaven. They sound great together. They play off of each other's strengths very well. And this is one of the best hip hop records to come out of the 2010s. Great stuff. Really glad I found this. And I far prefer this cover in comparison to the actual one. All right, next I've got The Suburbs by Arcade Fire. For a long time, I considered this to be a 10 out of 10. And that is because it was very important to me in the past. I listened to this a lot my senior year of college. The record is about breaking away from a place of comfort, stepping out onto new horizons despite it being unfamiliar. And that was exactly what I was doing. And so this record really hit close to home for me. I can't say that I love it as much as I did. So I don't consider it one of my favorites of all time anymore, but with that being said, it's still a very fantastic indie rock listen. Cover's pretty iconic. And like I said, like it's very nostalgic to me. It's a very nostalgic listen. It reminds me a lot of my college years. which is both good and bad. And this record, while being a little bit inconsistent, has some fantastic highs. So really good stuff, even though I don't really consider it one of my all-time favorites anymore. And we also have Reflektor by Arcade Fire. Talked about this in a monthly recap, but I like that it reflects light. That's very cool. It's got sort of this like iridescent feel to it, which is very dope. Like, I love the way that that just like shines. I hope that you can see that on camera, because otherwise I just look like a dumbass. Say what you will about like the content of this record. Some people love it, some people hate it. I happen to be one of the ones that thinks that it's pretty all right. I'm a big fan of Reflektor, of Normal Person, of Porno. I think that Arcade Fire progressed their sound in a very natural way on this record, and James Murphy of LCD Sound Systems production is a very welcome surprise and a very nice touch. And yeah, it's, I don't know, it's just cool. It's one of the more recent ones that I've got. But yeah, I just had to pick it up for that shine. Boys, we are almost done. Home stretch. Next, I've got Blue Rev by Alvvays. This is another one that I don't actually spin that often. I love the blue. I love the blue pressing. I think that's very cool. And there are some fantastic cuts off of this thing, don't get me wrong, like Pharmacist, Easy on Your Own, After the Earthquake, Velveteen, Belinda Says. Like, there are a lot of heavy hitters on this thing. I don't think that it's anything to write home about. Alvvays is a very sweet and cute indie pop group, but they're not doing much in terms of breaking the mold or anything like that. But then again, I don't really listen to them for that. I listen to them because I like the cute and catchy earworm choruses and the fun and extensive melodies that they perform. And this record is kind of their best work to date. I don't know, it's just kind of a cool thing to own. It's a nice and easy listen. It's a good one to just throw on while you're cooking or something like that. Yeah, I don't have much else to say about that one. All right, next I've got Mad Villain, Doom and Madlib. You know the drill. What is there to say about this record that has not already been said? Some of the coolest hip hop I've ever heard. Doom is one of the greatest lyricists to ever grace this earth, and we lost him too soon. This thing sounds like a comic book or like a Saturday morning cartoon in all the best ways. Yeah, I don't know, like just the wordplay and Doom's lyrical ability alone is just like so awe-inspiring, and Madlib is a fantastic producer, and so they play off of each other very, very well. As a fan of hip hop, like this is just kind of a necessity. This is something you just kind of have to own, and it's one that I actually listen to quite a lot. So, Mad Villain, it's a banger. Speaking of bangers, I've also got the Low End Theory by Tribe Called Quest. Similar to Mad Villainy, this is just like some of the smoothest and coolest hip hop to come out of the late 90s. This I honestly feel is like a holy grail of hip hop records. It's got some of the coolest, most simplistic, but most effective production. And all of the MCs come through with some killer flows and just some like really energetic performances. This is a record that I listened to a lot back in the day. I don't listen to it as much as I used to, but that still does not diminish how fantastic this thing truly is. Yeah, just kind of like heater after heater. There are some bangers on this. Yeah, glad I own this. Next I've got You Forgot It in People by Broken Social Scene. This is one of my favorites, and it's an odd one because I can't really tell you why. It's one that I've been listening to since I was a teenager, so maybe that has to do with it, but like Anthems for a 17-Year-Old Girl is like one of my favorite songs of all time. It's one that should not work on paper, but it's one that means so much to me, and I think it's just so effective at creating an atmosphere and also just like really looping you into this like monotonous kind of trance-like state that makes for just like a really engaging listen. And that's just one song. Like a lot of the stuff on here is so strange and so unique that it's hard to walk away from a record like this and feel untouched by it. It's one that like honestly I've been listening to for like quite some time, and every time I put this on I find something new to love that I had missed before. And that to me is a sign of a great record. So yeah, this is one of my all-time favorites. Some just like really great indie rock, a staple of the genre, and one that I also find to be like a little bit overlooked at times. So great stuff. This is genuinely just like a great record. Next, I've got All Born Screaming by St. Vincent. This is a new one. This released a couple of months ago. Definitely one of my favorites from the year. Entirely self-produced, which is like awesome. St. Vincent is so talented. She is such a talented, not only performer, but also just producer. Like, this thing just sounds so rich, so layered, so engaging. I also just love the album cover. Like, it's super unsettling, but it's also just like so, it's so chaotic, but so calm at the same time. I don't know, it's just a very like unique composition. The interior is like hilarious. Like, she's peeing, and like, it's like why? Like, why is she peeing in there? Yeah, this is a great record. I talked about it in a monthly recap, so I'm not gonna talk about it much now, but just like, it's great. It's really good. Next, I've got Mannequin Pussies, I Got Heaven. Talked about this in great length too. This is one of my favorites to come out of this year. The pressing is like this nasty, like grimy gray, which perfectly matches this album's energy, dude. It is a perfect blend of punk and indie rock, and it's just some of the best material to come out of this year. I'm very excited to see them live in October, and yeah, I don't know, like, this is just a very impressive and engaging record to come out this year. So one of my favorites, absolutely. Next, I've got Dragon New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You by Big Thief. This is the comfort album, dude. It's a long one. It is a slow burn, but there are some beautiful cuts off of this thing, like Little Things, Flower of Blood, Red Moon, Simulation Swarm. This is a record that I love to put on when I'm cooking. It calms me down when I'm freaking out. It's just some really solid, like, not even just, like, it's not even solid, it's beautiful. It's like, it is fantastic, masterful folk music, indie rock, singer-songwriter. It dabbles in like country and like blues rock kind of vibes. And I love this. Like, I love this record. It's one that I felt like I had to own. Brings me back home every time I listen to it. It has that like kind of Midwest aura. And it's a record that I've found great comfort in over the past couple of years. So love this one. Like, genuinely love this one. Next, I've got Melodrama by Lorde. This is, do I want to say this? I'm gonna say this. I think I mean this. I think that this is the best pop album of all time. It's just like every song on this thing is so masterfully crafted. Lorde is a prominent and dominant vocal performer, and the instrumentals on this thing are so catchy, so engaging, so unique, and just like it's just so catchy. This thing is so catchy, dude. Green Light, The Louvre, Hard Feelings, Loveless, Supercut, like Perfect Places. All of these are just like absolute slappers. Lorde is in her bag on this record, and the album art alone is just like so captivating, so beautiful to look at. It's a great wall piece, but it's also one that I play like very often. This is one of my favorite records like of all time, and this is for sure my favorite pop album of all time. So, oh, we're so close. Oh, we're so close. Dude, we got 3 more records left. Next, I've got The Midnight Organ Fight by Frightened Rabbit. One of my close friends put me on this record. It is a Scottish indie rock group, and it's some of the best indie rock I've ever heard. It feels to me like it should be a staple of the genre, yet it is severely overlooked. It's one that my dad likes too. Tracks like The Modern Leper, Fast Blood, Keep Yourself Warm, Floating in the Fourth. Like, all of these tracks are so catchy. The riffs on this thing are amazing, but the lyrics on this thing are so devastating, especially following the news of Scott's passing. Yeah, I don't know, like everything about this record is just like very good. Sorry, I don't really have much else to say about it. Like, this is just one that I felt like I had to have. When I saw that they had this at the record store, I was like, damn, I need to get this. Yeah, it's awesome. If you haven't heard of this, which like I'm assuming you probably haven't, like, give it a listen, dude. Like, these guys were incredibly talented, and some of the music on this thing is like tear-jerkingly impressive. So, awesome stuff. Next, I've got Tiger's Blood by Waxahachie. Just some really good alt country. I talked about this a little bit in my monthly recap, but just like one of the most like endearing records to come out of this year. I really, really like this thing. If you like alt country, like this is like some of the best stuff to come out this year. Very homey listen. Some killer riffs, some even more killer choruses. I believe this is also like, is this red? If this isn't red, I'm taking it back. It's red. It's red. That is a nice red. That is a nice ass red, dude. I don't have much else to say about this other than it's just, I really like it. It's a really good one. Yeah, great atmosphere, great vibe. Highly recommended to all my country dudes out there. And ladies, country dudes and country dudettes. And last but not least, we have The Bones of What You Believe by the CHVRCHES. CHVRCHES. It's not the churches. The churches. The churches in the States. Some of the most successfully executed revival electropop to come out within my recent memory. There are some absolute bangers on this thing, like The Mother We Share, like Recover. This is just like, it's just a fun listen. I don't know. It's an album cover that I've always been really intrigued by. It's one that I've always kind of, that's always stood out to me. So when I saw it at the record store, I was like, I gotta have that one. It's just really good. I've always liked CHVRCHES. They are also a group that meant a lot to me when I was younger, and so that has kind of translated to now. But yeah, bangers. There are some bangers on here for sure. And that's it, dude. I'm tired, and my throat hurts, and I've been talking for too long, and I'm about to run out of storage. So keeping it short. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this video didn't get super long, but like, let's be honest, dude, it probably did. I appreciate you guys for supporting this channel. I love music. I love talking about music, and you guys, some of you guys are kind enough to sit down and listen. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate all the support. If you like what you saw, if you like the kind of content that I've been producing, give me a like, give me a comment, give me a share, subscribe. I might do some like vinyl update videos every now and again in the future. Maybe I'll keep this to be like a yearly thing. It kind of depends on how much money I spent on vinyls. But yeah, I don't know, that's kind of it. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a great evening. Stay tuned for more videos. I'm gonna be uploading a bracket video within the next couple of weeks. We also have a new monthly recap coming out at the end of the month. I've been Riley from Blamwagon. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.
Fuck.